There was, gentlemen. How you doing this evening? This
Fantastic, Scotty.
is the Tournament Power Hour. That is Danny Bacon, and that is Nick Huxon. How we doing, lads?
Any better, it'd be
Doing
you,
great,
Scott.
Scott. How about you?
Oof. I don't know about that. Nick, I do believe
Cheers,
that you unfortunately sustained an injury last weekend. Okay. All right. Well, it's not a severe or serious injury, but needless to say, your handstand days might be over for the time being.
Time being, we're going to take a mild break from amateur gymnastics, I think, and the high kicks.
Attaboy. Well, you know what? There's always time for rest. And after this past weekend,
What about the worm? Is the worm out?
No, we can still do that.
Wow. Good times. Good times. Well, listen, lads, the last time I saw you, we were up at the Sioux together enjoying what was a very crisp and blustery day, or weekend, I should say, up at the Sioux. All I could say is that, the scenery was breathtaking. For someone who has not been to the Sioux, this is what we had in front of us, and unfortunately, you guys were missing out. If you have been to the Sioux, then you know exactly what we're talking about. This was the field, and of course, we had an incredible venue. Nick, talk about this venue.
Man, like if you wanna get a lot of the NOWT events are small towns, and not taking anything away from them because they have their own importance, but being beautiful downtown Sault Ste. Marie, this is what I grew up looking at, fishing out front. I mean, there's nothing better. We walk up onto a stage filled with people, hold some big walleyes up in front of the crowds. The fish are beautiful. They are some of the most magnificent looking fish in anywhere I've ever caught them. And I mean, pretty much anything that you just mentioned and showed there is breathtaking. We're lucky to be there.
100%. As we mentioned, this was the last leg of the NOWT for 2024. Wrapped up, I would say, in one of the more. It was a beautiful venue. I as soon as I pulled in, I was just blown away at the tent, the stage, the parking, the docks, all the amenities that were available. You had gas right there. The parks folks that were helping out that set it all up. I can't thank it. I mean, they don't work like typical city workers. They were there from dusk till dawn. They were at our beck and call, and I know Lua and Tyler, if they were here, they would be praising Rick's name, who went above and beyond to make sure that everything went well right down at Roberta Bondar Park. And, of course, the facilities that associated and encompassed that whole thing was something that I hope to see again. And, Nick, I would like to say, if there is an event on the NOWT that has the greatest potential to grow, it's most likely that event.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think going into it, it was pretty intimidating for a lot of anglers seeing we had 200 and some miles of fishable water in this event, which is incredible. But it just showed that as I mentioned before in the previous power hours, that it can be won in so many different places. We had anglers in that out of town anglers in Lake George that were fishing suspended fish there. We had anglers down at Drummond Island in the Detour area. It was tricky getting down there. We went down there day one, couldn't make it day two. We had to abort mission and down to St. Joe's. And all in all, we had top two teams were out of town teams, not even local talent. So that's hats off to Alex and Joel. Those guys put a monstrous bag up, and first time ever seeing Great Lakes, first time ever fishing current walleyes, and they go and win the tournament against people like myself and Jason that have fished multiple hundreds and hundreds of hours on this system. Like what those guys did is incredible. And second place to Steve Gravel and Kevin Robineau. Unreal. So I think next year we'll see a much greater turnout, and I really hope to see this tournament grow.
Well, I think you called it. So as you mentioned, after first day, to be able to post a 28-pound bag, in some cases that wins a tournament over a 2-day span. But to bring in 28 pounds the first day, and I have to laugh because they came in a little early, and Jay right away turned to Rob and said, well, hey, listen, dude, we still got like an hour and 10 minutes. And let's face it, the weather wasn't the greatest. What they were having to deal with wind and chop and everything else. Rob's immediate answer, and I can't say it here because we're going to try and keep this a family show, is, dude, you're out of your mind. There's no way I'm going back out there. I'm done. 28 pounds. If someone's going to beat us, tip of the hat to them. But there's no way I'm going back out in that. Then, of course, day 2 comes. And as incredible as those bags of fish were, day 2 then blows in just as day 1 finishes, and it progressively gets worse. Now, before I go any further, one of the hardest things, of course, as a tournament organizer is to declare a cancellation or even a postponement of a tournament, no matter if it's day 1 or day 2, but especially day 2 when you have leaders in place and you've got a small craft warning on the south side because, of course, it was a north wind. I know Lua was pulling her hair out and was very anxious and was stressed out. But at the end of the day, it was voted that we would carry forward. And I'm so glad that we did based on what we saw on day 2. But, man, when you guys wrapped up at the end of day 2, if the morning had been anything like it was in the afternoon, there is no way in heck we would have ran that tournament.
I mean, even on weigh-in, like when we were running back, though, Scotty, like it was almost like it was a high wind. The waves didn't seem to be building like they were the day before. At least in the areas like halfway down. I know the guys that ran back down to Detour. We bailed out day 2. We took some pretty big waves. We were fishing in 4 or 5 footers out in the big water. Day 1, and then day 2 we stuck it back to some local spots and hunkered down on the river. And I mean the whole way back, like we never seen any waves bigger than 3 feet. I'm sure Lake George got pretty bumpy at some points, but if you take the shipping channels up, you can pretty much stay out of the waves and not see anything bigger than a 2-foot chop. Which I mean is no joke, but it's the boats that we're running now. I mean it's pretty reasonable waves to handle, and there's a plenty of areas to fish protected by the wind or somewhat protected by the wind.
100%. Now, Danny, I know you fish the Spanish. That's your home waters, but of course it is the same area roughly. Were you at all surprised to see the final totals? Like the fact that we were so close to the 50-pound mark was truly incredible. Like that's almost hard to believe.
No, I'm not surprised with that at all. And in fact, I expected to see a lot more of the anglers in that field. I thought it was going to be a lot more of a competitive race throughout the whole thing, even though it was very competitive. I know the weather beat up guys and prevented them from getting locations. And, when you get a massive cold front, I think it was 27 degrees on Thursday. And then when everybody woke up in the morning, it was like 6 degrees. So that affects fish really, really quickly. And for the weights that those guys got in fishing those conditions is really, really impressive.
Absolutely.
They did quite well, and my hat's off to them. Unfortunately, we missed out on this one due to some engine troubles, but it was one that I was looking forward to in a way. It's like I said, it's only about 70 miles from my place. It's the same fish in regards and same kind of fishery. So I was one that I was optimistic about. That was for sure.
And that was the cool thing, of course, when you're driving to Sault Ste. Marie, and then you start to hear where the boundaries are. And Blind River was where Steve and Kevin fished, and you pass that a good 2 hours down.
Bruce Mines.
No, Bruce Mines.
Bruce Mines. You're passing that like 2 hours down the road, so it's incredible to think on water that folks were traveling that far to find fish. But you know what? They found them, and to Steve and Kevin, who we thought might take it. Because as I said, day 1, Jay and Rob had a firm grasp on first place, even though Steve and Kevin didn't trail too far behind. But that was an incredible bag that Rob and Jay brought in. And then, of course, day 2, Alex and Joel, I don't want to say pulled it out of, the thin air, but because they were in the hunt. But to be able to bring home the $7,000 prize and a host of other prizes, this was truly an incredible achievement. And I do believe Alex, Dan, you can mention it. Alex won Angler of the Year, but just by a very narrow margin.
Yeah, by 0.85 of a point, like not even a full point. And when you touch base on the fact, like you said, day 2 with those weather viruses, if they would have called day 2, Alex would have never even got close to winning it. So like that had some major ramifications in that, not just in the tournament, but in the Angler of the Year standing. So yeah, very impressive what he done.
Touching base on some of the fishing that happened out towards where they were. Anytime you get a really stiff north wind, what happens is it changes the current flow in a lot of situations. So it will it actually drives the water off of the north shore of our area, off the big water where our boundaries were by Bruce Mines. It will drive that warm water down and push it through Detour Passage and change the direction of that flow, which in turn draws the cold water in from like Thessalon area in Lake Huron, that ice cold water, and brings it in. There was a 14-degree temperature swing in under 48 hours. So those guys were able to find these fish that were relatively specific spot-on spots that didn't have as much fluctuation in temperatures. I ran out there. That was my day 2 spot where a lot of the anglers were. Knowing we couldn't get there after day 1, we fished detour day 1, and then knowing we couldn't get there day 2, or if we could get there, it'd be near unfishable. We ran back up to the area, the other our other spot, and we dropped the trolling motor in. Looked, it was 52-degree water temperatures when in practice it was 67. And touching back on your comment about the 50-pound bags, and surprised, almost every single day in practice we had northwards of 25 to 27 pounds a day without pushing it, not beating up our spots. We were having 25 to 27 pound bags every single day. So it was in practice, and that cold front really screwed up our fish. But it's so the bags that these guys pulled in, judging the weather conditions and whatnot, is incredible. And I mean, I think next year you're going to see it probably closer to 60 than you will 50.
Just to add to that, the National Walleye Tour held their championship 200 miles south of that location, and they didn't break 40 pounds for
in 3 days.
In 3 days.
It's true, and of course, there were some very incredible. There were some incredible sticks that showed up from Michigan, especially. It was an honor for me to finally meet Harold Gravett, who I've been following for a number of years, and to see him out on the dock. And I recognized him. He recognized me. I was like, holy smoke. I almost had to pinch myself. But there was a couple other big sticks. And then one in particular, I can't remember his name, younger guy, who had just won, if I'm not mistaken, a tournament the weekend before.
I know Atkinson, maybe. Was it Billy? I don't know if he fished tournament. I know John
No,
Goble's son.
it was Atkinson. No, I don't think it was Atkinson.
I know John's son was supposed to be in there, Easton, and he had won the I think Youth Angler of the Year for the St. Mary's Walleye Club, but the last minute he pulled out for football, and Eric had replaced him.
You had guys like Billy Atkinson, National Walleye Tour Pro. You had his dad in the same boat, National Walleye Tour Pro. You had Dane Stanaway, another guy that's fished many events, won amazing stuff. You had John Goebel, who's last year the St. Mary's River Cup or St. Mary's River Walleye Club Angler of the Year, won multiple events last year. Eric Carlson in the boat with John, who's won the NTCs, won national team championships on the St. Mary's River. Good night.
I was going to say, he's either tapping you out or tapping you in. I don't know.
He stopped out. So you got these guys that are like, they're hammers. These guys are absolute hammers. And, like they put up like the numbers that we would expect. It's the St. Mary's is an incredible fishery, and it's a fisherman's fishery too. When you dial something in there, it feels special because it's not easy. There's a lot of fish in the system, but you really got to understand and figure them out. And it's that game of chess, I find. It's on the St. Mary's, and when you can find a checkmate there, it's something special.
Were you at all surprised at what was working, Nick, in terms of presentations and baits and choices of colors and patterns?
It's a jig and a crawler is pretty hard to beat on the St. Mary's system. It's there's no question. We caught I forced a bite in practice on jig and wraps. I caught fish on plastics, NXS plastics. I caught them on Z-bands. I caught them on a few other things. But the end of the day, it's especially when the water. We looked at the forecast. We seen what was happening. It's hard to beat a jig and a crawler in our system. There's a huge goby population downstream, and then also upper river. We noticed there's a lot of you catch walleyes with young of the year lamprey in them as well. So the walleyes are feeding and targeting lampreys a lot of times, sea lampreys. So the crawler perfectly represents them as well. I've seen them many times coming in the boat, puking them up.
Isn't that interesting? See, I didn't know that walleye ate the lamprey, so I just learned something tonight. Incredible. But a jig and a worm, folks, you know, at the end of the day, pay your entry fee, and a jig and a worm's all you need. And you can be potentially in the top 25 or in the money, depending on who your partner is, where you're at, and how lucky you are. But I will say again, congratulations to Alex for winning not only the tournament, but of course, Angler of the Year, because he was amongst some pretty esteemed anglers in the NOWT, but he managed to pull it out, as we mentioned, by just a very slight margin. And, you know, Jesse Deschamplain's had a great year. David Grad had a great year. Jason Doyen's had a great year. Shane and Corey have had good years. Like, are there any other notables that had good years, Nick, that was no surprise to you?
Frank and Robbie and Nick.
Yeah.
There's so many. Like it's you know, it'd be quicker to tell you who didn't have a good year. You know what I mean? Like it's everyone. Like the guys are getting better. We're seeing consistency so much on this circuit. But if you could pull up that picture of Alex again, is it? I can see you're eyeing up that money pretty hard there, Scotty.
I'm just amazed. I'm amazed at the amount of money that is handed out during these tournaments. Truly amazed. Yeah. It's unreal. And as I said, a true testament to everything that goes into it. Of course, all of the tournament directors, all of the volunteers, and we can't thank the sponsors enough for everything they do. So I'd say for our last go here, talking about the NOWT, let's just give them their last due. The title sponsors for the NOWT.
The NOWT would like to thank Mercury Outboards, set the water on fire. Prince Craft Boats, enjoying the spirit of boating for over 70 years. J&B Superstore, your adventure awaits. Raxfin, making the outdoors more fun. Eastview Chevrolet to get you there, and Garmin to get you home. And of course, thanks to all these generous sponsors.
Of course, we are talking about the St. Mary's River Walleye Cup that happened this past weekend up on the St. Mary's River and in Sault Ste. Marie. I am joined, of course, with Danny Bacon and Nick Huxon. One thing, too, I will say this. If there was a body of water that I truly thought would surpass Rob's 10.35-pound fish that he caught in Duberville, I thought for sure it was going to be caught in this system. Were you surprised that it wasn't surpassed, either one of you?
Not even a little bit. I fished this my entire life. I have never personally had a double-digit fish in the St. Mary's system in my boat ever. Now, as you get further down, like Spanish River area, those fish, the fish up here are long and lean, kind of like me, really skinny, and but they're current fish. They're built a little bit different. If you look at some of the pictures that we had posted, and you see they're really long, they're lean, and they don't grow those big shoulders and the big bellies that you see elsewhere. So it didn't shock me one bit.
Yeah, that system there's a lot more nomadic as well. Those fish tend not to be like where we have here; they're more residential, so they grow and we can find them a lot easier. Like, the fish are obviously there, but they're they're hard to target, they're hard to lock in. I'm not shocked either that it didn't come from there, but if any of the systems that could have done it, I thought that was one of them, and it proved not to be.
And it was unique because, of course, we weren't measuring a slot limit or overs and unders like we do in some of the other venues. This was a 15-inch minimum. Everything over 15 inches was allowable, so there was no overs and unders. But the one thing I will say, being river fish, of course, they do have a little bit more life. And Tyler and Chantel had a heck of a time measuring, processing, and weighing those fish because they were healthy and full of spunk. So, yeah, needless to say, to your point, Nick, these fish are definitely on a treadmill the entire time they're in that river, and don't try and hold them back.
And funny thing is, when
you look at
you're fishing, when you're fishing with a professional bass angler, I was fishing with Frank Clark on this one. We decided to switch up the partners. Rob fished with Jason, I fished with Frank, and they ended up beating us. But that's besides the point. But when Frank always makes fun of them and says they're like reeling in socks, they don't fight like a bass. And when he hooked his first St. Mary's River walleye, that changed really quickly.
Yeah,
and not only that, too, sorry, I was going to say that those fish tend to be competing with different fish. Like you guys caught a lot of pink salmon. There's a lot of smallmouth in there. You got drum and everything else in that system. So you're not always catching what you want to catch.
Correct.
That is true. That is true. And of course, that is, I will say, the one good thing that we could talk about forward-facing sonar is that when you did see a fish and you did hook it, you remembered what it looked like on the screen so that you didn't pitch to something that looked like that again. But yeah, that's the one good takeaway for forward-facing sonar when it came to St. Mary's, because to your point, even when I was out with Sean and Ash the day before it started, we were pre-fishing. I was amazed at the variety of species that we were seeing and catching. We were seeing pink salmon jump all over the place. We were catching smallies. They were talking about how healthy the pike and muskie population is up there, not to mention all of the other species as well. But yeah, I will say that is quite a fishery, and a vast fishery with a multitude of species. So if you get a chance, don't hesitate to get up to Sault Ste. Marie and the St. Mary's River, because you will not be disappointed. As mentioned, Frank and Rob, they managed to pull in this 10.35 pound fish in Duberville. Duberville can now be the ones to beat their chest to say they produced the biggest fish on the trail this year. And of course, congratulations to Rob, who caught his personal best walleye, which to me is amazing. I'm actually stunned. The amount of fish that man has caught, and I'm talking trophy fish, that was his personal best. And to catch it in a tournament, even better.
Yeah, absolutely. That's usually the signs that, when individuals that fish a lot of tournaments, they tend not to catch their trophies in a sense like that, because you're not concentrating on them. When we, like my biggest walleye, I was fishing out here every day for almost a month because I had the time for it. A couple hours here, a couple hours there, and that's how I was able to land a big walleye. When you only have, 3 or 4 days of pre-fishing and where you're not fishing hard, and then 2 days of actual tournament fishing, your focus is completely different and your approach is different. So to catch a fish like that during a tournament that's a unicorn, really.
I do have to ask Nick, when it comes to the exchange of partners, because it is to your point, I didn't see too many partners that stuck together for the entire trail. Is there any method to that madness? Is there a reason you guys do that, or do you have enough of one another and you want to change it up? What is it?
No, it's fluent. Being fluent with your partner and understanding, thinking on the same mind. You don't have to actually sit and talk to someone, knowing how what the program is, thinking a lot alike. I fished enough with Frank now that it was fluid and flawless. We made some great decisions together. We're on the same page, and that's a lot to do with fishing with Jason and Rob. Between the two of us, like I fished lots with Rob, I fished lots with Jason, and then also with Frank. So we're kind of all in cue on what we're doing and how we operate. So there's a lot of benefits to that, knowing what we're thinking and what the next plan is, time to leave, time to go. Should we stick it out, grind it out for a couple more hours, and just the subliminal messages without having to ask, right?
100%. And a big shout out, of course, to Lua and Tyler and Andre, who basically single-handedly ran that tournament. We did have a host of volunteers that showed up on the Saturday that helped out in a huge way. And a big shout out to my buddy Tony Sizanowski, who just came to say hi and we immediately put him to work down at the docks, and he was docking boats. So it was nice to see that. But again, Nick, just because you're so close to the individuals and volunteers that helped put that tournament together, if you can speak on behalf of them, I'd really appreciate that.
This just goes out to every tournament, and whether it's the NOWT, whether it's the any event that there's volunteers in, like it goes down to your kids' events, goes down to anything. Any volunteers that are sitting here listening, it doesn't matter if I fished your event or anyone else. I can speak on the mass of all anglers, and you guys don't get the credit that you should get, and believe me, you do. You're in the hearts of every angler out there. You guys are the reason we're able to do what we do, and the reason that these events go on. So from the bottom of every angler's hearts that has touched any event that has had any volunteer support in, thank you guys, all of you. It's I mean, it's an amazing thing, and without you, it would be impossible. So
that's awesome. So just to wrap up, of course, all of our champions and all of the hardware that was taken away, Danny, I want to take this opportunity because, of course, female angler of the year, you might know a little bit. I'm not 100% sure, but it was awesome to see Marilisa win that as your co-angler, as your wife, your partner,
my anchor.
Your anchor.
Your rock, my heart and soul. She's right here looking at me. So
on and on and on. But speak on behalf of Mara for what she accomplished, because this truly was an accomplishment. Female angler of the year is amazing.
Oh, absolutely, and especially something like that we worked that all year to do was kind of, we wanted to reach the championship, and we wanted to get top female angler for Marilisa. So we were able to accomplish all that, and she's actually, when you talk about switching partners, I fished every tournament I've ever fished with Marilisa except for one tournament, and I fished John Goebel down in Lake Erie. So we've got a lot of history together. We've had a lot of arguments on the water, so it was kind of fitting to see that we've had, and all of our success has been together as well.
That's awesome. Well, again, congratulations to Marilisa for doing that.
Thanks,
and you rock. I'm telling you, it's always fun to be around Mara. And of course, when we were at the bonfire after this was all said and done with, and big shout out to Steve and Angela for hosting what was a great evening, and we all sat around and had a grand old time. I got a chance to sit down and talk to Frank, which I've never been able to do in that situation, which was awesome. Of course, Danny, you were there. Nick, you were doing stupid human tricks.
And I planned that party without Steve's permission too, just
Correct.
To let you know.
Oh, okay. Now it's all making sense. But this is the part that I truly love about the NOWT is the camaraderie. There wasn't a seat available in the house. Everybody was having a great time. Everybody was telling stories, laughing and joking. It was a great way to end what has been a phenomenal season of tournament fishing.
There's no question.
I felt you were going into a video there, so you caught me off guard there. So I feel like a segue going into something like that.
Froze. I was like, did the screen freeze?
I couldn't agree with more. And like that's been like doing the tournament, especially for us, when you have your wife as your partner, we share the cost. It's 100% our expense. So we rely heavily on our friends and people like Nick and Steve and Angela and stuff like that. And they help us out. When you go up to Duberville, we know now we can rely heavily on Francis and Jesse and Chantel. And when you go to Batogam, you got Jessica and people. Christelle, she's all over the place. So it's nice to know that network is there and everybody's helping you out. And just makes it more fun to do.
Yeah, 100%. And Steve's with us. Actually, he just says it was great having all of you there. And so, Nick, you're okay. You're good. You didn't go overboard inviting too many people. The only thing you might want to do is check the lights on the top of your side-by-side. There was an apple tree that almost took out of the ground on your way out, but it is what it is. But a great night nonetheless. And of course, a big shout out to Chantal. I can't say enough about this lady. She always brings a smile, and a lot of blood sometimes rushes to my face because sometimes she's an open book and she has no filter. but she's always a lot of fun to be around. And Chantal, I'll be honest with you, you do bring a level of professionalism that I immediately picked up on when I first met you in Matagami. You do enjoy yourself, but you also know that you're there to work. And I've always said this to her: you are a good reason, a good part of the glue that keeps this NOWT together. So a tip of the hat to you for all your work. Jake Pepin, yeah, buddy. It was interesting to hear what that lad had to do in order to get back to the dock on day 2. Nick, Dan, maybe you guys want to fill in the gaps there.
The St. Mary's decided to bite back, and it took out his console on him. So thank God for a worm container and some Pepin ingenuity. I think it happened like well into it. So they put some time like that there. So Jake, I know Jake, he'll get that all fixed up pretty quickly there and be better than it was before.
It was awesome because like there's nothing that phases you guys, and it's a true testament to the perseverance that you anglers have. Like in the eyes of what could be a day-ending event like your boat falling apart or whatever, you persevere. I know Sebastian at Hearst, he had his trolling motor hit rocks the first day and he broke blades and was able to continue on and ended up in the top 10 of Hearst. So your perseverance and your never say quit attitude, it's another reason why I love you guys, because you guys are truly gems of the North. And
I'm sure every tournament angler out there has their own story on equipment breaking, and you just gotta you're out there to do it. I mean, what are you gonna do? You're gonna go back to the dock and cry and say we can't do this anymore? We actually got T-boned in a tournament one time and had the front trolling motor ripped off, and we back trolled with the kicker motor all day. And we ended up finishing 7th place in that tournament.
Incredible. I think Sean Leonard and Tyler Gagan had their trolling motor deploy while they were at like 45 miles an hour and sheared it right in half. So, and they finished their tournament. They kept going. And you hear all kinds of stories, and we've all been through there. We've had, you do what you have to do to make it work, I guess. Speaking of breakdowns, though, we did lose a team that actually I believe they blew their engine, and just going to show like how people come out. Jason's dad was there. We organized that pretty quickly. I helped him get the trailer, and he went and rescued him. And he drove 45 minutes away to pull him out. So that was kind of the advantage of St. Mary. There was other venues to get out, but
we also had another angler in practice that got stuck out on the water in those big waves. We had another angler that was able to pick him up, dock the boat, pick him up, drive him back to his truck so he can pick his boat up in safe harbor.
Wow. Yeah. You're always there for each other too. I love it too, because at the end of the day, you guys are always there for each other, no matter what the situation or what's going on, the occurrence. You guys are always there to give a lending hand. And again, I'm just amazed. I had the pleasure of going up to the trading post and speak to Lauren. What a facility what an opportunity folks have. If you are looking for anything that you need to fish the St. Mary's, by all means, I can't emphasize enough. The trading post in Sault Ste. Marie has everything that you're looking for and then some. Nick, you spend a lot of time at that. Take it from there.
Yeah, well, Mike's one of my best friends, so it's I unfortunately have to spend a lot of time at the store, and it's taken a lot of my money over the years. But they got everything from guns to anything to do with hunting, sport shooting, fishing, from really muskies to walleyes to panfish to whitefish to whatever you want. They got a little bit of everything, and Mike's just one of the best human beings. He fished the tournament this weekend, and I mean it's cool to see him supporting the events as well, both financially and competitively.
True enough. Now, for both
Mike cost me money as well today too. So I was walked in. We can't walk in without costing money, but I was going to give him a shout out anyways, because Mike not only fished the event, he was also one of the sponsors, and he was in the smallest boat of the event, and he stood quite well. He gave her hell both days, and no complaints. He had a good time and enjoyed the bonfire with us afterwards.
Yeah,
100%. Now, with this being the end and the final stop on the NOWT, there is a pause. What is it that you tournament anglers now do in the off season?
Go fishing.
Yes, and I don't have one myself, but if I did, I had one of those NXS koozies like Dan does.
I don't even have one.
Obviously, hunting season starts, and as much as you guys fish, you do hunt. So there's hunting that's upcoming. Dan, you say fishing. Now, when it comes to where you are in your own backyard, are the fish starting to really come in the Spanish now, or are you starting to see them start to stack up?
They kind of never really leave, but they kind of start settling into their locations around mid-July, and they just grow and grow and grow. And fall fishing is world class here. Like I caught my 15-pounder came in November. Nick got his personal best here last fall at the 13 pounds, and I've seen 17s caught here. We've got a lot of big fish, and they're stacked up. They're hungry. September, October is just a heyday out here, a lot of fun. So it's difficult to not do that, especially when it's not a very far run for us. But also, we can't beat inland lake fishing and hunting and out there. So we spend a lot of money to rig ourselves like that. This time of year too, Nick's a lot more into hunting than I am. I'll hunt a little later in the season with him, but he'll put pretty heavy the next few months. And so that kind of distracts you in a sense like that. But then we're also getting ready for ice fishing coming up and all these kind of things.
15 and 17 pound walleye. Like, I mean, I've been to Bay of Quinte more times than I can remember. And we go after fish at the Bay of Quinte. And I kind of thought they were the unicorns when it came to walleye in Ontario and Canada for that matter. But you're telling me that the Spanish has 15 and 17 pound walleye. Wow.
My personal best is 31 inch, 20 and a half inch girth. I got her up on the wall. She tipped 15.24 in the scales. My friend Schaefer Millette the following year, same girth, an inch longer, and it was just over 17 pounds. They've all been featured on Target Walleye, actually, so they've all been there. Nick's was 13 pounds, 12 to 10 pounds this time of year gets common enough. And, we got something exciting coming next year, and I think we're going to see some very big weights. There it is. There's my 15.
Now, the significance of the personal best that you caught, Nick, you caught that while shooting a show.
Yes.
Yeah, Roadfish TV show. Yeah, that was that made it a little bit more special too. It was my first real TV show that I helped film with GFW is my employer, and they're also the main sponsor of Roadfish TV, or one of the main sponsors of Roadfish TV with NXS Fishing. So it was a NXS fishing show, and it was pretty cool. I caught it on a bait that I helped design as well for a Livingston lure that I helped design, and that was pretty neat to get that all sealed and done on camera.
And it took an argument to do that, actually. Normally,
yes.
we bicker a lot, and this area is such a good fishery, especially for jig and minnow, reaction bait, all that kind of stuff. I know there's a trolling bite here, but it's hard to drift away from that. And we had maybe, 15, 20-minute little debate, and I know when I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm like, okay, fine, we'll do it. And we never only made one pass. I think we caught 4 walleye that we landed in the last.
Yeah, we caught it. We had a quad, and we had it was a triple. We had it was a triple header. The first rod, and I'm always the guy. I love trolling cranks. But
yeah, you got to tell, and I knew what it was right away. I was like,
yeah. My biggest thing, Scotty, is I'd rather net fish because I love the enjoyment of seeing people reeling in a fish. And when it's against guys like Danny, and I picked up the board, I seen the board chop and go back. I grabbed the rod and I tightened it up, cranked down, tightened up, and it didn't move. It was just line stretch. And with 150 feet of line out, I'm watching the board surge back and forth with head shakes on 10-pound mono. I'm like, this is either a giant walleye or a muskie, and it ended up being a giant walleye. So it was pretty neat.
That's impressive, dude. Very impressive.
And I know it's like my first reaction I did this year, and I looked at him. I was like, well, that's a big fish because he won't give me the rod because I was going to pass it off or I was going to fight it because that's the way he is. Like, you knew right away. The video has we got to have a little sneak peek of the video coming out, of the show coming out. So I'm pretty excited about that. And you can tell it's going to be excited. I don't know if Nick's got to see it yet, but you can see the look in his face. He knows exactly what he's got on there. And
yeah.
he had to rely on me netting it. And once I seen it, I was, I could have easily knocked that one off, I guess.
And you almost did. It was in.
It was
and
dodgy,
a
yeah.
shake and back in. The net job was flawless. It was it come up just out of net range, come up to the surface with the alligator shake, and
it wasn't hooked well at the end. It was definitely not hooked well.
No,
we got her in.
So, for the fish that Rob caught, I can imagine the anxiety that Frank had at that time. I mean, obviously he's got a few years behind him and he knows a thing or two about netting big fish. But when he knows the significance of a fish that size, what it means to not only where their standings are in the tournament, but also because it being a personal best. And I don't know if Frank knew that before or after, but I can only imagine as a netman, you do not want to screw up.
Don't mess that up, especially in the tournament situation. Bad enough where you're just in our situation where, we're filming, so it's a little bit more excessive because you want to catch that all. But during a tournament, we're in it, it obviously cashed them a check, multiple checks actually when you get down to it. So like that fish meant a lot. I wouldn't want to be. I would rather be Robbie in that situation than Frank because if you lose it, you lose it, but not the net man. I don't want to be the net.
Not a chance. I would 100% rather be on the net than on the rod. That I'm 100% okay with someone else fighting every single big fish in the tournament. I will net them because chances are I'm not going to miss, and you can screw it up so fast on a rod.
That happened to us in Matagami last year in the fall. We had a big fish. I was fighting it. It's coming to the net. And it was probably about a foot away from the net, and Mary-Lise was going down, and she noticed it swimming away, and she looks at him, she's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I lost it. It came off. Like, with nothing to do with her. It wasn't not her fault at all. It just got pinned, eh?" But she was giving me shit for like, "Why are you giving up on this thing?" And I'm like, "I'm not. The jig's already in my hands."
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, Nick, Dan, I don't know exactly. I can think back to a few tournaments. I want to say, Nick, you always seem to be in the money. Dan, you always seem to be up there as well. Outside of Mary-Lise winning Female Angler of the Year, and of course, how well both of you placed in all your tournaments. Any key takeaways from this season?
Yeah, I learned a lot again, and that's the thing I love about tournament fishing. That's like, we can talk all day, and you can go to the Sioux event, for example, as a good example. I live on the Spanish River. I fished my first Spanish River event. I finished in 67th place or something like that, or 66. I only got in 4 fish all weekend. I couldn't even catch my 6 fish each day. You realize really quickly that your skill level, you start seeing how these guys, like Nick was one of these people that I'd seen at the time. And I'm like, this is learnable. I can learn how to do this. And that was my focus. Within 3 years, I was in the top 10 in Spanish. So you can see that there's so many good anglers in the Sioux that could just absolutely run the gamut on this system like that. So many good anglers in Timmins. There's so many good anglers in Duberville. It'd be nice to see them out there because at the same point, it pushes us all. That competition drives us to be better. Like Nick and we both said, we like beating each other. I love it when he comes fishing here because this is one of the few places where I can humble Nick pretty quickly. But it is one of the few places I go anywhere else. I struggle. I struggle to keep up.
And Nick, as I said, you were in the money, I think, in every tournament that you participated in. What is it that you take away from a season like this? I mean, obviously, you probably want to improve, and you'd like to improve and win a few more next year. But what's your key takeaway from this season?
So, biggest thing is starting to pay it like. You pay attention to the small details and those little crumbs that you look at on throughout the week, the crumbs that you're taking in, they develop into a full meal eventually, and you're gonna put those together into a big piece that's gonna end up being a big piece of the puzzle that you often overlook. And once you start understanding what those little pieces are and start assembling them, that's when you become a better angler and you start developing off of that tournament after tournament. And it's everyone that's fishing these events. It doesn't matter if you're first place, last place teams, like no one's showing up to these tournaments. They can all fish. Every single person here can fish. It's a matter of watching your electronics, looking at water temperatures, bait fish, wind movements, currents. And once you can really start focusing on that, it's going to make night and day differences on your overall your overall tournament success.
I got to ask too, with there's a lot of scuttlebutt right now in regards to forward-facing sonar, and do you at all see the NOWT going down a road where they're going to restrict the use of forward-facing sonar or limit it in any way, or do you think it's just going to go ahead going forward?
I don't think so. I mean, if you looked at the Sioux tournament this weekend, I mean, there's 31 boats, but 31 boats had forward-facing sonar on it. You look at any of the other tournaments, you're going to some of the events. I think like 15 to 17 boats was the highest amount of boats that didn't have forward-facing sonar, and a lot of those boats, I'm going to say numerous amounts of those boats took off their forward-facing sonar to compete in a subcategory to the no live division. So almost every single boat has it now. It's one of those things. It's another tool. Like no one's driving around their 300s at 30 miles an hour, right? It's another piece of the tournament puzzle. It's just an evolving sport, ever evolving sport. So having it taken away from us, if you're going to take away forward-facing sonar now, I mean, take away all charts, take away all graphs, no Navionics cards, no nothing. We can go back to paper graphs. Like it's another tool in our toolbox. You're not going to say take a hammer away from a carpenter now that he's used a stiletto instead of a wooden mallet, right?
It's actually, and I agree with that, because I was watching actually an old In Fisherman magazine or YouTube channel from I don't know, about 15 years ago or so, maybe a little longer than that. And one of the things they were talking about at the time was when GPS became onto trolling motors, and they were talking about tournaments banning that. That was their conversation. That was Al Linder and a few other guys talking about that at the time. And it's just the way it is. We're in that cycle. And, you got a lot of companies now starting to understand that, yes, that cost point has gotten too far. So, you look at Lowrance made that move to say, here's an introductory model. And you got boat dealerships are saying they're not selling kickers anymore. Every motor, they're selling them with bigger trolling motors and forward-facing sonar instead of a kicker. So you're starting to see that transition. It's just a matter of time before that just catches up to everybody, right?
True enough. A big pat on the back, too, and a big takeaway for me from this season, obviously, was the anglers. And I saw that on day one. We were a little shorthanded at the Sioux, and I made a point of saying it over and over and over again. I'm just enamored by your anglers. You guys are all salts of the earth, solid individuals, and you're always there to help. And you recognize and have situational awareness to what's going on. Because after day one, getting beat up in that weather, I would not have faulted anyone coming to the dock and just collapsing and just, being as exhausted as I'm sure they were. But they really helped out in a huge way, especially with Andre and I trying to get all the boats stocked and the fish up to the weigh scale. But one of the biggest takeaways for me had to happen, and it was at the Sioux. The American anglers went up to Lua, and they basically all proclaimed that you have now proven to us that we could do a live release tournament. I don't know what goes on south of the border, and I'm not here to judge, but the fact that they were inspired to push forward for a live release tournament is a true feather in the cap to the NOWT, because the emphasis that is put on the fish, the care that is put into the fish, is really second to none. And to be a successful tournament, as much as it's great to have great sponsors and great anglers participating, the ability to be able to release all the fish that are caught is a big check mark that you got to tick that box. And I will say, we lost hardly any fish in the Sioux this past weekend. So a big shout out to all those involved, and Brian, who was down at the dock doing his darndest to do that. Of course, your dad was down there helping out with all the water and all the tanks. Nick, Jason Doyen's dad, was down there doing his thing as well. So it was a real team effort, and a feather in the cap to the NOWT, and a salute for all the fish, not only that you caught, but you managed to release. So here.
Absolutely. So just to touch on that a little bit, Scotty, I think the conversation was the amount of strain that we do put on fish. I mean, it is live release. We do put it the utmost care, but at the end of the day, I mean, we're taking fish from their areas, taking them for a 40-mile boat ride, bringing them up to the scale, taking them out of water, putting them into a bag with this much water in them, and bringing them up to the scales. Now, a lot of the tournaments in the US from that point take them out of the tanks. They put them into a dry tank, bump them, put them into a wet tank again that doesn't have clean water and constant oxygen. They put them into a box and then take that dry box and put the dry box up on stage, weigh them without water, and then take them from there and put them into a stagnant pitcher, pull them out of the water, take pictures with them, put them back into the box, and then they go down to a release boat. So there's a lot extra strain on those fish when it comes to that point where, you know, we've already put these fish through enough. We take as much care as we can through this, and now weighing them in water. The water's being replaced frequently. The bump tanks. I was the one that plumbed in the. I was the one that plumbed in the tanks to the bump tanks, so we made sure we had fresh water coming from the lake, so it's not chlorinated water. It's drawing right from the lake into the bump tanks, which drained into our staging tank. So we were able to keep those fish in water the entire time, to exception of a quick pitcher, and they're back into the St. Mary's River. So having those few extra steps without stressing them out, bouncing in a dry tank, I think is a huge plus.
That added,
Go ahead.
You're keeping that temperature consistent and stuff like that. But
Correct.
One of the things I do kind of want to add to this is, like we have our meetings at the end with the NLWT regarding all the tournaments, and we hear the numbers and stats coming back. And when you think about the amount of fish brought in, recorded, and how many with the losses, it's extremely low. It's it's well below like 5%, 3%. It's very low numbers, and a lot of the tournaments feel that that's still not. We haven't got there yet. And Nick made a very good point one time. He says, okay, well, you got 10 or 15 guys going fishing for a week, and they're going to go get their limit to bring home. They're taking home, harvesting legally, killing fish more than what we're losing in an event with 100 boats.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very good point. It's very we work very hard. Some of the events actually work hard on stocking programs as well. So there's a lot of caring and up here for what the fishery is going to be like.
So I'm going to open the floor to both of you. I'll go first in terms of things that I would love to see to improve the experience, the catch, the release of all these fish, and the overall prestige of the NLWT. I would love to see G-Juice made mandatory and enforced throughout the course of all the events on the circuit, simply because we all know what it does for the fish. And it certainly improves, if not is the determining factor, whether these fish can be released alive and healthy. So going forward for next year, I would love to see G-Juice made mandatory. Dan, I'll start with you. Is there anything that you would like to see improved to make the experience in the NOWT that much better for next year?
We're getting to fish management. It's nice to see guys that start seeing what we're doing and doing the same research we're doing and understanding fish management, and properly using clips and fizzing if you have to, using G-Juice when it's necessary, that kind of stuff. Understand where the fish fights, because lots of times we see that just in the Instagram guys, they catch the fish. It's like, oh yeah, I just took my picture and I released it. First thing I do when I catch it, I throw it in a live well. I mean, this thing just ran a marathon. Let it catch its breath before we do anything. That's kind of my way of thinking. But in that regard, I think it's pretty good. Most guys are pretty good. And they try. And you see there's more people talking about that. As for the events themselves do pretty good. The NLWT and the events need to, we work pretty good digitally. There's always constant changes and out there. So we need to keep up to date on that, keep moving forward and out there. But yeah, it's more like feedback from the anglers is really important, because at the end of the day, they're the ones not showing up, or they're the ones that are showing up. So what can we do to improve your experiences better? Not everybody is like me and Nick, where we want to fish. I fished 4 events this year. I was on the books for 5 out of 7. Nick, I think you fished 5 this year, right? So you fish 4. So we, you see that intense. A lot of guys fish 7. Some guys fish 4. And you look through that list of angler of the year, you can do the math. About 70 or so people actually fish more than 3. Why aren't you not coming? We, outside of the economical cost of fuel and hotels and stuff like that, we can't control. What can we do to kind of help? That's a tough one, right? So it's the hurdles we all have to face.
It's the double-edged sword that we've been dealing with the entire season. So we're combating it. Talking on fish management, for me myself, I don't use G-juice. I don't. I have it in the boat for an emergency situations. But I'm a believer of pumping clean, fresh water in if the water temperatures. I would rather pump in fresh water all day and keep the water flowing, so you don't have any of that the ammonia, any of the not good stuff in the live well coming in on recirc, which G-juice eliminates. So if you're running on recirc, absolutely. But if you're running pump water, for me, I run my high-speed pickup in tournaments, and I run it on full blast all the time. My live well pump never turns off, and that's the way I like to run it. And I mean, I'm not going to say it, but we've been pretty good. I haven't lost a fish in many years. So it's we've had some close calls and whatnot, but this is my way of doing it. But as far as the events go, the events are great. We're working on fish management as well as the NOWT board. We have a committee going together as to figure out how we can do it better. There's talks about having a release trailer, so like it's similar to a release boat. There's been talks about having some videos of proper techniques for fizzing fish, proper techniques for weighting fish down to equalize them in the live well. So this is all stuff we've been talking about behind the scenes that a lot of the anglers aren't seeing.
Just to kind of touch base on the G-juice, like I do use it, but the only time I do use it is so my boats don't have high-speed pickups. Not every boat does. So I'm the same as Nick. When I'm fishing, my pumps are on auto, so I'm constantly putting fresh water in there, and I'm aerating at the same time. But when I'm on plane, all I have left is what my recirc is. So if I know I have a long run for, like when I was in Cap, I knew I had to run for 45 minutes, 50 minutes to get back. I obviously put G-juice in there because it does help. But it's you're trying to keep them a little bit more pumped up. It works. I've had a very good record. In the last 4 years of tournaments, I've lost one fish at a scale. So I feel pretty confident with my techniques are working. I fish with Nick. I've been in his boat. I've seen how he's set up, and I know that his fish survive. Especially the ones that we do harvest. It's hard to clean them when they're so lively, to be honest with you.
True enough. And as I said, a testament to your anglers too that would take the time when they knew a fish was suffering in the live well. They would come to the docks, they'd come to the weigh-in, and they'd weigh that fish in just to be err on the side of caution. You do get penalized, obviously, for the sake that you're not able to weigh in a fish that is dead. So it's in your best interest to make sure that they're all lively. But the fact that they're taking time, burning, valuable fuel and time to get to the weigh station to weigh in a fish, just to ensure its healthy release. Again, I was blown away at that. That was awesome to see.
Yeah,
awesome.
Especially when you get into a tournament like the Sioux, where you have no restrictions on your size, so you could have had a box full of 25, 30 inches if you really wanted to, and so you go back to the Sioux, like I don't think they lost any. It was very minimal if they did lose any, and those are all big fish taking up oxygen and space. So it's a testament to the guys that fished that. Those 30 boats did a good job, and that's all it takes, really.
Now, we do have some boats in the field that have some gargantuous live wells. But Fish Baits brings up an interesting point about having 2 live wells instead of just the one. Do either of you agree, or is it something that might be overkill in your eyes?
Guys have been disqualified because of those 2 live wells for getting a fish in one or the other. So
true. Yeah.
And usually the secondary, like my boat, the manufacturer does not make it with a second live well. It's just one big large well, live well, which I kind of like that as well. It's anglers are print, but that at the end of the day, we buy our boats for specific reasons, and we can't always check all those boxes, right?
True enough. Right.
Absolutely. I do want to mention one more thing too. I got something very special in my hands here. As much as it's just a fishing rod, this is something that our team of pro staff guys. You've seen all the green shirts all season, Scotty. This is more or less just being released now. This is our final prototype for the NXS Tournament Series fishing rod. It's made by Okuma. We've partnered up with Okuma to make an NXS Tournament Series line fishing rods designed specifically for tournament angling, and it's met all of the check marks for all of our pro staff teams. Like you got all the green teams. You got the Deschamplains, you got Jason Doyen, you got Rob Laframboise, Frank Clark, Danny Bacon, Steve Gravel, Kevin Robineau, so many other talented anglers that are putting numbers up on the boards. We've all collaborated together to build the perfect NXS tournament series rod. There's going to come in 3 sizes. We have a 7.3 medium light extra fast drop shot rod. We have this one here is the 7-foot medium multi-purpose medium fast, and then we have a 6.8 glide bait pitch rod as well. Each rod's going to feature a drop shot keeper as well as a hook keeper up top above the foregrip. They have a forward grip as well, so perfect balance on a 7-foot rod. They are the absolute nicest rods. Honestly, one of the nicest rods I've ever fished with. 90% of my fish that we caught on the both me and Frank on the St. Mary's tournament came on those rods.
Now, you boys, are you into your cork? Is it all about the cork on your reel seat, or does it not matter?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I find you lose so much sensitivity when you go to the EVAs and whatnot on the foam handles. The cork is it's you have that vibration, but you still have the it doesn't get slippery like a straight blank rod with a real seat.
Slimy and stuff like that. And that drop shot rod there, I know Mary Lisa got her hands on one in Duberville, and she has not let me touch it ever since. It's been her rod. I'm not allowed to use it, and she's used it religiously, and so it says a lot for her. She's very, very particular about what she uses, and I've been using them, and I really like them. I really enjoy using them, especially the 6.8. But I like to fish. I'm a guy that likes to fish heavy. I like heavy weights. And I find those rods react very well. And when you do hook onto a fish, they got a lot of movement for those big head shakes and take up all that strain.
100%. Chantal is bringing up a point about volunteering. And I would have to say I was really taken back by the number of volunteers that were available at all the events, namely Duberville. I do have to mention Duberville because I was absolutely amazed at the number of volunteers they had at that tournament. But when it comes to volunteers, they are far. It is a commitment. It is a sacrifice, not only of your time, but of course, driving there. So there are expenses that are incurred. Would the NOWT love to be able to help with those? 100%. But I think the message there, Chantal, might be that the tournaments themselves, if they could gain more volunteers that are local, so that you don't bring on that burden, is probably the game or the aim for next year. And what do you guys feel?
Well, I mean, it's easy to kind of, we all want to compensate. I mean, and I worked with in Spanish here. We had a rock concert here for 7 years called Rock and Roar, where we had over 200 volunteers spread out through all of our departments, and it was hard to do. And the hardest part necessarily too was how do we let them know we appreciate them, because at the end of the day they are volunteers. It's not a paid position, because all of a sudden you give them money, they become employees, and all of a sudden you have to get into EI and all this other stuff. It gets into a whole headache. But you start realizing pretty quickly that a lot of people, the volunteers, are as fanatical as the anglers are. They just want to be on that vault. They want to be on that side of the stage, whereas we want to be on the other side of the stage. So we the hardest part is, I don't think we've seen that this year, to be quite honest, to a level that I've seen in the past. But people are a lot more respectful to the anglers. They're not so abusive. Especially the weigh scale is absolutely the worst job for any volunteer. Like, my hat's off to Chantal and Tyler. In the past, Christelle's done that job. You've seen it firsthand. Everybody goes through there. Nobody likes getting bad news or whatever's happening, right? They do their best. So it's hard to do that. People tend to be, when you get a volunteer, you get 3 or 4 people that do volunteer. They say, well, I have a friend or I have a family member that wants to get it, and that's how it grows, right? Chantal's not wrong in any of those points. And I think there's a lot more people that would be very interested in getting involved with that.
It is, and of course, kids are always looking for volunteer hours, so there's that option as well. I know there was a hiccup in the Sioux. There were a lot of events that were going on. I believe it was the East-West weekend, which is the start of the football season. So I can appreciate that, being a ball player myself.
School.
The school obviously starting. Yeah, there's a lot of variables obviously that hinder volunteers being able to come out. But at the end of the day, would these venues, would these events love to see more volunteers? 100%. But if I could make a suggestion, reach out to the NLWT, reach out to the tournament directors, and I will say, if you get involved, you won't be disappointed. It's a bit of work. You're going to put on a sweat, but it's all going to be worthwhile at the end of it. When you see the results, when you see the smiles, the cheers, and the city's getting behind these events, and it doesn't matter what venue, what event it was, to see the buy-in from the community it was truly a huge takeaway for me when it came to the NLWT and all the events that they hosted.
And the volunteers, they work directly with each independent tournament. They don't work with the NLWT. They don't go through us to go through an event. But if volunteers reach out to us, we'll gladly say, yeah, absolutely, where are you interested in going? You can get a hold of Chantal or Christelle or Jessica or Andre, depending on where you're going, and Alan and stuff like that. So that's generally where, most places are pretty good at finding their volunteers for all that.
I will go first as our last word for tonight's show, and of course the season that was the NLWT for 2024. All I can say is thank you, and thank you again. All of you folks were so welcoming, so warm. The hospitality was through the roof, and for a gentleman that came from the city, I was accepted in as one of the family. And if the NLWT has any mystique about it at all, you are a family. You do have your moments when you disagree. You do have your moments when you celebrate and shed a tear. But at the end of the day, that's what most families are. And you guys are nothing less than a family. And again, all I can say is thank you to the NLWT. Danny, I'll let you take it from there. We'll give Nick the last word.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, everybody. It was a great season. I had a blast. I loved spending my time with Scottie and out there. We're going to get you up here hopefully real soon, and you're going to sit in the other seat beside me, and we're going to do the live from here, and we're going to relax and, smoke some cigars, drink some scotch, and go catch some walleye.
I'll be in the hot tub behind all you doing the live from there. That's my place.
Nick, giving you the last word on what was an incredible and successful 2024 season for the NLWT. Take it away, my friend.
Well, I mean, it's just every event gets better. They get stronger. The anglers get stronger. We get better. Family gets tighter, gets better. Everything about this season, it's got better. So I'm looking forward to next year and seeing what's going to happen for next year. And I mean, if it's anything like this year, it's going to be another fantastic season.
Awesome.
Lots going on next year.
Yeah, absolutely. That wraps up our show. And of course, all those who are watching, we thank you. All those who support the NLWT, and of course, us three, we truly appreciate. And of course, to all you volunteers, event coordinators, tournament directors, sponsors. It is a concerted effort, and we couldn't do it with any less than all of you. So thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts for your investment, your buy-in, and your support. This wraps up what was an incredibly successful 2024 season, and we will see you on the flip side.